Welcome back to Spitballin Cards, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about a topic that only one of us knows about, who's Jeff. I don't know what it's going to be about yet. Jeff, what is the topic for this video?
All right, guys. We've got Phil, Scott, Ty, and me here discussing. I know you wanted to get into it, but we got to at least introduce who's here. So I watched a video from Dan the Cardman. If you guys don't watch his YouTube channel, you should check it out. He gives a lot of topical videos. He posts very often, which is great. I caught one of his recent videos, and he was talking about a soccer card he picked up. And I don't know anything about soccer cards, but it was a soccer card with an auto cleat in it, which seems pretty great if you're a soccer fan. And he was discussing how, despite the fact that soccer is played with your feet, the soccer cards, the patch autos with a jersey piece, go for more than the shoes for some reason, which does sound crazy to me. But amidst that conversation, he talked about something that I wanted to bring up to you guys, and that's the cards that keep appearing every year, that are printed every year. How do we differentiate them? So in his example, he was talking about LeBron Prism Golds, for example, and they're printed out of 10. And now there's 11 or 12 years of those LeBrons. And what differentiates them from each other? Obviously, the first card printed of a set is very popular. But from there, what differentiates them? Is it the design of the card? He was suggesting maybe that are we going to start looking at cards from years where players won the MVP or won the championship? Will those hold sort of a premium? And I never really looked at it that way. For me, if in baseball terms, if we're talking about like a heritage action shot or a Topps Black flagship parallel, it's always been the image has been the differentiator to me, how from one year to another. But I wanted to throw that to you guys. Are we ever going to look at cards from years that players won the MVP, won a championship, had something memorable? Will those hold a premium, or will that somehow be a differentiator in your eyes when you're looking at these cards that come out every year? If you're not trying to make a run at them, which some people do, if you're looking at the cards as individuals, what separates them?
So I'll say this first. There's a reason I primarily buy rookie cards, because I do think that is a real issue for long-term value. I think some images may transcend that issue, but those are going to be fewer and far between. Like outside of the rookie cards, some good images like the Soto Shuffle and 2020 Stadium Club. Yeah, that's cool. Or the Shohei Ohtani from 2020 Stadium Club. Yeah, that's cool. But I think it's going to be a lot fewer and far between. That's why I try to go for rookies if it's a possibility. I will always try earlier cards than later in their professional years cards myself.
So I actually did a video on the Market Movers channel 8 months ago called The Undeniably Best Way to Collect. And it had everything to do with this idea that you collect based on stats, on notable stat seasons. And I kind of broke down, there would be a lot of ways you could do it. Like this, it really was a collector focused video. It was not an investor focused video. And I think that's an important distinction because I don't really see this taking off as something that people focus on from an investment perspective at all. Part of the reason is you can see an RC badge or a Bowman First on the card, but you don't see anything on the card that indicates that the player that they won MVP, that they had a record-breaking stat season, that they, won the championship. Those things don't show up, if at all, until the next year. So there's sort of a conundrum in that regard. If you actually have that's on the back of the card, oh, this guy, hit 62 home runs or whatever. So I did that video and I said, you could sort of build runs. You could get the top 10, home run leaders from MLB every year, going back to whatever, 2000, and just put them in a binder, or have the top 9, so you have them all slotted in there. And that's kind of a fun way to like remember notable athletes, notable, star performers in respective sports. And there's a lot of nostalgia for me that fires up with that. It's like, oh yeah, remember Luis Gonzalez that season when he just was amazing at hitting. So I think it's a fun idea. I have heard this floated around quite a bit over the last year, specifically with like MVP seasons and championship seasons. When it comes to the cards like the Prism Golds, and we could apply this to baseball too, I do think there's something to the design, and specifically in Panini, people definitely gravitate to 2012 Prism. It's the first year. 2013 is very popular. 2018 is very popular. And then from there, you kind of get into some debate. 2015 and 2014 tend to be kind of next on the list. So it has a lot to do with design. I feel like people gravitate towards stuff that's earlier and doesn't show up as often. The newer the sets, even if they're cards numbered to 10, they tend to hit the market more regularly. Whereas these other ones are either just hidden in somebody's collection and they don't even really know what they have, or they're just firmly locked up into player PCs and you don't know as much, about them. But there's differences too when you get into like the iconic parallels versus everything else, the 199s and the 125s and all this other crud. That's when it starts getting really dicey. And I think it's hard to see those values like withstanding the test of time on those particular cards, as opposed to the like super rare golds that are numbered to 10. So I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I do think it's an interesting topic for sure.
My opinion, I think the years argument is pretty tough. The further you go down the road, people won't remember what year someone won the MVP.
That's right.
Like,
Yes.
I
I
have a hard time with that one. I know you just said that too, but I've
Yep.
always had an issue with that. Or like, man, he won a Silver Slugger that year. Like, I don't care that Billy Butler won a Silver Slugger in 2012 Topps Chrome versus a cool 2013 Topps Chrome.
Mhm.
Like, I think imagery is more important. Like, if it's a home run image, cool. Or I think the most important thing is if there's a particular parallel that year, that's cool. So like in 2011 Topps, they had the Hope Diamond parallel. So like that set is one that transcends because the Hope Diamond's popular. Even if you got like a not very popular player, they're worth a lot more than the previous years at a 60 that's not a Hope Diamond. So I think that might be more important, is targeting specific sets and years that have specific parallels that are sought after, or designs that are sought after. I think that's probably your better bet if I had to guess.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Phil?
Yeah. From an investment standpoint, I'll talk about the collector standpoint afterwards, but I look at a player's rookie card, say it's a Topps Chrome base or Topps Chrome Gold refractor from the rookie year. For the following year, so the second year card, this tended to stay true before the boom. So 2018, 2019, but also during the boom. The second year card would be worth about 10% of the rookie card. So talking about apples to apples, comparing the gold refractor to the second year gold refractor, the first year base versus the second year base, same grade. Then the third year, fourth year, fifth year, I didn't really look into, but I assume it would be a little bit less than the second year, but then it would start to fall like less and less. So third year through 10th, 11th, 12th year to me would be about the same in most cases. Now I know Jeff and Chris are big on the early 2000s refractors of Elmer Pools, Ichiro. So like the second, third, fourth, fifth year cards of those, if they're like the gold Topps Chrome refractors, certain parallels especially, because there's not as much of a glut to compete with from second, third year, fourth year, and rookie year. I can see that point from an investment standpoint, even for those cards that aren't rookies or aren't second year cards. But from an investment standpoint, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, usually I'm going to be staying away from those cards in most cases, even if there is some sort of significance. And if there is a significance to me, it's more likely to be tied to the card design as well as the image. I think, Jeff, you talked about the image. Ty, you brought up the card design. Those are the variables I'm going to look at versus statistical significance. So the MVP for baseball could be equivalent to the championship for basketball. With baseball, it's even harder because you just got one of them. But again, and you guys all kind of brought it up, or at least Scott and Ty did, the story, having to communicate that to a buyer. We talked about this being an issue with specific short prints, specific patches, when you really have to talk about that story every single time to get them to understand, like, no, this is from the year where they stole 70 bases. It's just too hard. It's just not going to work for me.
It's like an eBay MVP year. It's like, oh, shut up.
Yeah. Well, I have a good example here from an image perspective. So this Giannis just did 15.6 on alt. Okay. And in the last year, and it's all about the image.
I agree. Images can transcend for sure.
So people love Nebulas. Nebulas do very well. But in the last year, if I look at market movers, like of Giannis's 1-of-1 cards in the last year, the next closest is 7,000. He had a Prism Black from 2019-20 where he's just dribbling the ball that did a hair under 5,000. So it's a big difference when you get these types of things. LeBron has the famous Kobe tribute dunk where it's a landscape card and he's flying after the hoop, up to the hoop after Kobe passed away. So the images can definitely make a huge difference in any sport, not just
Yes.
obviously basketball or baseball.
Yeah, I wanted to say something, Ty. You brought that up, and it's funny that you brought up Giannis because I was thinking about it as a Bucks fan. I'm not really a basketball card collector, but the thought did occur to me to try to get either a team set or all the starters from that Bucks year. But the problem I kept running into is that that was a 2021 card, and it still had a photo from 2021, but primarily they're a year behind. So if you want players on the roster, then you'd be getting the 2022 card, but they were champions in 2021. And it was kind of this mental gymnastics I had to put myself through, because if you get the cards from the year, typically those players are long gone. So that's what's kept me from doing it. You guys had talked about having to tell the story, but even from a personal standpoint, as a collector of a team or as a fan of a team, trying to collect something like that, it's not appealing to me because of that.
Yeah. I wish I had that problem. No team I've ever cared about has won anything. So Rockies, Jazz, Gonzaga basketball, it's tough.
Yeah, the Hope Diamond thing you brought up, Scott, that to me, you can make an argument that, well, it's like an all-time set, but I think it also falls into, for the guys that have those cards, there's very little alternatives that are as cool as that, right? So if you bring back Hope Diamond in 2025, it's not going to be the same, because you've got all these other competing alternatives, rookies, or if that is a rookie.
Look at like 2011 Topps Finest versus 2014 Topps Finest.
Right.
Like the set transcends. I know it's a good rookie class, and I understand that, but it's also the design and the way it looks. So it's just some things just catch on, and you got to try to identify that trend as quick as you can and get the guys you like. It's interesting. A good example, though, is I feel like personally the Blind Bat Slabbin guys, no offense, Jeff, really have kind of sparked this boom for short prints. I feel like you've been a big part of it. Like, I don't think you've been trying to you make them blow up, but I think your education on those has turned them into more sought after cards, whether it's good or bad. I think it's great, but that's happened. But if I'm looking at Mookie, I'm going to share my screen real quick. One thing for me with Mookie is I won't buy a Dodgers card because I like his early Red Sox cards myself. But here's Stadium Club, where was the image variation? Like, he's had horrible images for his image variations for a long time. They can't do it. This one's okay, but it has Gavin Lux on it. I don't want Gavin Lux on my card. That's why I've never bought that one. Versus his Red Sox card that looks really great, right? This is the green monster in the background on opening day, most likely, or 4th of July, one of the two, and it's great. It is more rare, which helps the value.
What have you got against the Hollywood SSS?
That's the one exception I have. That one is the one Dodgers card I probably would want to own. Yeah. And maybe if he gets autographs again, I would buy a Dodgers autograph if that ever happens. But it is all circumstantial, and it's more to me about the appeal of the image and the rarity of the card than it is anything to do with the performance on the field myself. Obviously, if you have a player that is in like there's a Vlad card and he's in a Orioles uniform, obviously that won't have as much impact as an Angels uniform, but still.
Yeah, it feels like right now, living in the moment, this is Juan Soto's first year with the Yankees. We don't know if he's going to get signed by them. That'll make a big difference too in how many collectors there are that actually desire his first year Yankee stuff. But there are, what's that? The top Series 1 SSP or SP that sold for closer to $2,000 at least once. That's recent. That's right after the product came out. And this is where there could be eventually some sort of blending between the collector worlds and the investor worlds, because the collectors often dictate what the preferences are. Maybe not necessarily a Bowman Chrome. It hasn't worked out that way, but kind of get where I'm going. So there's a chance that ends up being a decent card to buy. Not at today's prices, but it could be significant. But then again, what you're talking about, Scott, a player jumping from a market, major market, Red Sox, to a better market in the Dodgers. And are his first year Dodgers cards like any ridiculous? Because there's just so many alternatives.
His tops. So people do. I know a lot of Mookie collectors because I am a Mookie collector, and they do prefer his Topps Chrome image to any other later Dodgers image. So yes, but the premium wouldn't be as big as you'd think.
Yeah. So the answer is yes and no.
Yeah.
So it helps, but not as much as you'd think.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The the video made me think about that to see, just to get your opinions as to if there is anything there. I tend to think that you're right that having to tell the story about the card would have a negative impact on values, and just getting away from the design and the image being the differentiators. Those seem to be the main things. But I just wanted to bring it up as a topic to talk about and see what you smart gentlemen thought. So appreciate it.
So speaking of that, basically my advice on this topic, Jeff and Chris bought short prints imagerations because they thought they were cool. And they said, these have potential. Just follow your gut. Like if you like them and you think there's an opportunity, best case, they become really valuable and sought after in a few years. Worst case, you have cards you think are sweet. So that's kind of my thoughts, is if it's not like an investment, like a rookie card, that's a clear card. That's a pretty good approach. If you like it, there's a chance someone else is going to like it too down the road. If you can quantify why. You can't explain it too much. You have to say, I like this. The image is perfect. This design's perfect. The variation's perfect. If you can do that, I think you can expect others to follow suit.
If you want to buy a Bryce Harper first-year Phillies card, then could be a good time.
It could be. Like Bryce Harper, if he wins the World Series or two with the Phillies, he's already a big fan favorite all time for them.
Mhm.
So, but it could be huge.
Before we go, I just wanted to give a shout out to Chris Hayes from our comments. We appreciate everybody commenting on our videos. He made a comment on our PSA gimmicks video, and he appreciated Ty throwing the Price is Right sound on the SSSP holiday. That's it. And then he also had to say, poor Chris is looking at these Topps holiday SPs like Vito Corleone with Sonny. Look at how they massacred my boy, which was right on. Poor Chris. If you freeze frame the video while you're watching, yeah, Chris was not a fan of those. So great comments, Chris.
Great comment.
We can't emphasize how much Chris loved that comment. He commented on it 3 or 4 times in our group chat. So
yes, and even though he couldn't be here, he wanted us to make sure we mention it. So, but we appreciate all the comments.
definitely. And thank you all for watching. Shorter episode this week. We're planning on moving towards a 3 episodes per week cycle moving forward. A little bit shorter videos, but more content. And other than that, guys, listen in the comments down below what your thoughts are on images, cards, values, and we'll see you in the next video.